Hello, everyone joining. Thanks for coming on in. Feel free to turn on your camera, keep your cameras off. I will just make sure that everyone is muted for the time being. Um, we're going to jump right in. There will be a recording of this, so if you have to jump off early, no worries at all. Awesome. Thank you, everyone, for being here on your Thursday evening on the beloved Valentine's Day. I think it's today, right? I'm not even a Valentine's Day celebrator. So, uh, my name's Monica. I am coming at you from my car office. I am the founder and CEO of Maria, and so excited to see some of your faces if we haven't met before um, on the internet world. Really happy you're here and joining us. Grateful for you all for being part of our community. Uh, and we are so excited to have Jess with us today. Jess is a functional nutrition therapist. I might be saying this wrong. Therapy nutritionist, and focuses on PMDD. She's the founder and CEO of Her Mood Mentor. Hopefully, you follow her on Instagram as well because she is sharing such amazing information for the PMDD community. And we're grateful to have her and to have her share all about symptom mapping today. So hopefully we all learn something. And I will hand it off to her. Feel free to leave questions in the chat. We will do a Q&A at the end. And yeah, anything that comes up, drop it in the chat. I will be in there kind of moderating a little bit as well.
Hello, hello. I'm so excited to teach this training. Thanks for having me, Monica. I'm curious, I'm not going to pull the chat up because we did some magic getting this all set up perfectly and I don't want to click a wrong button, but I'm curious how many of you here are experiencing severe premenstrual symptoms, whether that be mood symptoms or whether that be physical symptoms. I'm curious the motivating factor behind coming to this training. And we're going to be talking about symptom mapping today. And I specialize in PMS, PMDD, hormonal mood symptoms. But really, this is a great tool for anyone with a menstrual cycle. And we're going to get into it. So first, I just want to introduce myself. Monica already introduced me so well, but I am named Jess. I'm the founder of Her Mood Mentor, and I'm a nutritional therapist and board certified menstrual health coach and educator. I founded Her Mood Mentor in 2019, I think it was, but I started 2 years before that building my practice. And Her Mood Mentor is a virtual premenstrual clinic where I am helping others reduce and learn to better manage those hormonal mood symptoms. It wasn't by choice that I came into this work. It was through living with PMDD undiagnosed and misdiagnosed for 17 years, just like Monica. And at rock bottom, I made a choice to take a different path and try something else after 17 years of trying to navigate my symptoms with antidepressants, antipsychotics after I was misdiagnosed as bipolar, and birth control. And luckily, that worked for me, helped me. And within 3 months on that path, I experienced my first symptom-free period. And at that point, I was just felt really called to do this work and help others reduce and manage their symptoms because it can feel so hopeless to live with these symptoms, PMDD specifically, and it does not have to be that way. So here's a little bit more about my educational background. I just wanted to include this here for you before we dive in. And then today what we're going to be covering is symptom mapping for PMS and PMDD symptoms, but like I said, this can be useful for any cycle symptoms that you're having. We're going to talk about the fundamentals, we're going to talk about identifying cycle patterns, and I thought I changed this last one, but I didn't. We're not really going to talk in this training about the science behind your suffering, but you're going to get some ideas about the menstrual cycle in this training and how to understand the cycle better and what it is saying about your symptoms. So it still plays in here into this training a little bit. But stay until the end because I am going to give you our symptom mapping kit, and then I have a special offer to share with you. So first, I just want to explain what PMDD is if any of you are here and you're wondering. PMDD stands for premenstrual dysphoric disorder, and this is a cyclical mood disorder that causes significant mood changes and physical symptoms in the luteal phase. So that 7 to 14 or more days, depending on how long your luteal phase is, before menstruation, premenstrual. So it's happening in that phase before you bleed. But symptoms can onset at ovulation. So oftentimes we face misdiagnosis because it's not like we have the symptoms and then we bleed. That would be more obvious. It's usually many days before that. And so this is one of the reasons why bipolar disorder is the most common misdiagnosis for PMDD. It really comes back to a lack of cycle education, which you're going to walk away from this training with some cycle education. But unlike PMS, PMDD symptoms are severe enough to disrupt your daily life and relationships. We're going to talk more about the core symptoms and the diagnostic criteria in a moment. But this condition, PMDD, we expect, or it's estimated to impact 3 to 8% of reproductive aged females. But again, a lot of the cases, Monica and I can attest to this, are undiagnosed or misdiagnosed. So I think the number is quite a bit higher than that, unfortunately. Common symptoms of PMDD, and like I said, I am going to share the diagnostic criteria with you, but to get started, these symptoms, something to remember about these symptoms is they are cyclical. So we're looking for mood and emotional changes. Irritability, anger, rage, interpersonal conflict are very common with PMDD. Having depressed mood, feelings of hopelessness, worthlessness, feeling guilt and shame are very common with PMDD. Anxiety, tension, and feeling like you're keyed up or on edge, also very common. A decreased interest in your usual activities, difficulty concentrating, focusing, or thinking, just generally brain fog. And then fatigue, sleep issues, whether that be hypersomnia or insomnia, changes in appetite, whether that be food cravings or aversions to food. And then feeling overwhelmed and out of control is a big symptom. Now, you'll notice that many of these symptoms that I've listed are psychological symptoms, but physical symptoms are very common as well, including breast tenderness, swelling, joint and muscle pain, bloating, and weight gain. Risk factors for PMS and PMDD symptoms are going to be genetics, trauma, nutrient deficiencies, exposure to endocrine disrupting chemicals, neurodivergence. There's a big link between neurodivergence and PMDD, and then poor light environments, among many other things that you're going to see through this training are going to drive your symptoms, which we are going to be mapping and learning how to map today. But I wanted to give you a visual of where in the cycle these symptoms are showing up so you can have a better understanding of what to expect when you're mapping. So the first day that you're fully bleeding is day 1 of your menstrual cycle. And this is a image of what your hormones are doing throughout that time. Of course, we all live in unique and individual bodies, so this isn't a perfect representation of what your hormones are doing, but this is what we expect them to look like over the 4 different phases of the menstrual cycle, which you can see down here. The menstrual phase, the follicular phase, the ovulation phase, and the luteal phase. And PMS and PMDD symptoms are arising right around ovulation, right after ovulation, and then lasting throughout that luteal phase. Now, not every one of you is going to have a 28-day menstrual cycle, so it can go longer than that, but this is where we are looking for those symptoms and the patterns of those symptoms, which you're going to see when we get into the process of symptom mapping. But I also want to bust a myth here, because I think there can be an expectation when we don't have cycle education and cycle awareness that we will feel the same way every day of the cycle. And that's just not how female biology works. We're going to feel differently throughout different phases of the cycle. That's completely normal and to be expected. Yet at no point should we be debilitated by our cycle symptoms. So that's what we're going to be looking out for in the symptom mapping process. And then if you're using symptom mapping to determine if it's PMS or PMDD, I want to share 4 differences that we want to be aware of. So the cause behind PMS and PMDD, while like there's not everyone doesn't agree on, oh, this is the cause, it's not definitive at this time. PMS is believed to be caused by a hormone imbalance, where PMDD is believed to be caused by a sensitivity to the normal fluctuation of your hormones throughout the menstrual cycle. PMS is going to be mild to moderate symptoms, where PMDD is going to be moderate to severe symptoms. And PMS is going to last for around 3 to 5 days, where PMDD, like I said before, is much longer. Symptoms can last 7 to 16 days, depending on how long your luteal phase is and when your symptom onset. And then the prevalence. So up to 90% of reproductive aged females are experiencing PMS, while it's estimated in air quotes, that 3 to 8% of us are experiencing PMDD. And then before we talk about mapping, I want to talk about one more thing that's really important here that falls under the radar, and that's premenstrual exacerbation. So this is referring to the cyclical worsening of symptoms from an existing condition during the premenstrual phase. So pretty much anything that you're experiencing, ADHD, any autoimmune condition, depression, anxiety, anything that's already going on can get worse premenstrually. So this is something we want to be looking out for in the mapping journey. And we want to be able to distinguish between PME, PMS, and PMDD, because the way that we address that is going to look a little bit different. So why does symptom mapping matter in the first place? Why do we want to monitor this? So in 2015, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists and the American Academy of Pediatrics named the menstrual cycle the 5th vital sign. So right up there with your respiratory rate, your body temperature, all of our other vital signs. They're saying the menstrual cycle is a measure of your overall health. So paying attention to it, including detailed daily symptoms, can help you assess your menstrual health and aid you in diagnosing hormone disorders, imbalances, prepare you to better manage those cycle symptoms, and helps you provide a data record to accurately measure the efficacy of different treatment protocols you're going to be using. So before we get into learning how to map, I think it's really important to just do just a little bit of cycle education here. Like, what are you even mapping? So there are 4 phases of the menstrual cycle. It starts with the menstrual phase. We move into our follicular phase. Then we move into the ovulatory phase. Then we move into the luteal phase. Now, for each of us, the date range is going to vary. All of our cycles are unique, but we need to be aware that this is what we're working with, this is what we're monitoring as we're moving into the symptom mapping process. And then here I wanted to give you a little bit of an overview of those hormones that are fluctuating throughout the menstrual cycle, because these are going to be impacting your mood, impacting your symptoms. So these are the primary sex hormones that are fluctuating throughout each phase of the cycle. And then I love this one, so nerdy. Your body is going through so many different changes throughout each of these different cycle phases. Your ovarian, your ovary is preparing to ovulate the egg, and then is going to turn into a corpus luteum, which is a progesterone supporting gland. So this is like, I teach an entire mini course on this. This is so amazing and such a huge vascular event for your body to go through that requires so many nutrients, so much energy. And if you don't know this, you're going to go through your menstrual cycle maybe hating it, maybe hating yourself because you don't understand what's happening. You need to be aware, and you deserve to have access to the reproductive health education that I promise you were not taught in grade school. We talked about the hormones fluctuating. Throughout this process, your endometrial lining is changing, your cervical position is changing, your basal body temperature is changing, and your cervical fluid production is changing. So I hope this makes you feel a little bit better if you're in this training and you're like, oh man, I'm really struggling with premenstrual symptoms. Like, why can't I just get it together? What's going on here? Like, a lot is going on in your body. So much is going on in your body. And if you don't know this, it's going to be hard to move forward and address these symptoms with kindness and compassion for yourself. I really feel like education is the first step and awareness is the first step. And that's why I start all of my students and clients with symptom mapping. But I would never, if my bicycle was broken, I would never go over to my bicycle and say, okay, I have a broken bicycle. I don't know what's wrong. I don't know what the parts are. I don't know how they connect to each other. I don't know what tools I need, but I'm going to fix my bicycle. Yet we're doing that every single day with our bodies. So this education is really important to set a foundation for you moving forward. And then this is just like a quick little way to think about those cycle phases that might be easier as you're getting started. And like I said, you're not going to expect yourself to feel the same in every season. You're not going to expect yourself to feel the same in every cycle phase. So I should have changed what this says here. Obviously, this is what these are. But when we're thinking about the menstrual cycle, winter is going to be the menstrual cycle. Spring is going to be the follicular phase. Summer is going to be the ovulatory phase. And autumn is going to be the luteal phase. So as you're working to address your symptoms, you can kind of map how are you living in winter? How are you eating in winter? And do those types of things when you're in your menstrual phase. How are you living in spring? How are you eating in spring? How are you moving your body? And do those types of things during your follicular phase. Same for summer, same for autumn. And then one last slide here before we get into how we're symptom mapping is looking out for what even is a healthy cycle. So when we're looking at evaluating our symptom mapping data, we want to think, okay, you might not know this, but a normal and healthy cycle is going to be 24 to 36 days long. So if on your symptom mapper, it's less or more than that, that's a vital sign that something may be going on. A healthy menstrual cycle phase lasts from 3 to 7 days. So if you're bleeding less than that, shorter period of time than that, or longer than that, that might be a sign that something is going on. Normal and healthy blood color is going to be bright red with minimal clotting. And normal to healthy blood volume loss is going to be around 30 to 60 milliliters each cycle. So less than 30 milliliters or more than 80 milliliters can indicate an underlying health condition. This is how bleeding disorders are often diagnosed in females. And then to kind of help you understand that a little bit more, a regular tampon or pad is going to hold around 5 milliliters, and a super tampon or pad will hold around 10 milliliters. So this is the blood loss that we're looking at over your entire menstrual cycle phase. But again, if you're collecting this data and you don't know what are the parameters of healthy and normal, you're not going to be able to interpret your data as well. And there's so much more to this. This is just, I condensed the education here for this training because we're talking about so much. So getting into symptom mapping versus cycle tracking. So we probably all track our cycles, right? We have an app, we put in when we bleed, when we stop bleeding, and then it might show us estimated ovulation time. It might break down the cycle phases for us if it's a great app. But generally in cycle tracking, you're really including like the dates, the length. I doubt you're including the color or the quality or the volume of your blood loss or how many tampons or pads you're using. But you can get a lot more detail oriented with cycle tracking. But cycle tracking is most commonly done in an app. and it is distinct from what we are talking about today, which is symptom mapping. So symptom mapping is the process of tracking and recording your cycle symptoms and their level of severity throughout each of the 4 phases of your menstrual cycle, where we are looking for patterns and reoccurring symptom presentation throughout your cycle. So this creates a visual graphic over the course of the month or over the course of your entire menstrual cycle of what is happening with your symptoms, how severe are they, what is the pattern that's developing, and this is so awesome. So we're gonna get really detailed about this, but first you're probably thinking, Jess, this sounds so overwhelming. But symptom mapping isn't something you will do forever like cycle tracking. So you're always gonna be tracking your cycle, hopefully while you're having one. For symptom mapping, we are using this as a tool to assess your symptoms for a diagnosis, to determine your patterns, to monitor the efficacy of protocols that you're putting into place, and to monitor side effects of medications and supplements, and more, which we're going to talk about. But some tips to make this easier before we get started on really diving into the symptom mapping process. I want this to feel attainable for you in the short term. I recommend doing this for at least 3 months so you can really recognize your patterns. But some ways to make this easier are going to be, well, one, you want to wait until the end of the day to record your symptoms. So in the morning, if I have an episode and I'm experiencing a lot of irritability and anger and rage, and I start an argument with my husband or something, okay, that's information I want to remember, but I want to see how the entire day plays out before I record my symptoms. So you want to be doing this in the evening, or you want to be doing this in the morning for the previous day. So some ways to make this easier are to stack this new habit you're bringing in with something you're already doing. So a lot of my clients have a morning routine where they're drinking their tea or their coffee and they're, sitting down for a moment while they're waking up. That would be a great time to do it. Some of my clients leave it in their bathroom and do it in the evening when they're brushing their teeth. So find a way to add this on to something you're already doing, so it's not just this random thing that you are random new habit that you're trying to build into your day. Often my clients like to keep this on the refrigerator so they remember to do it, and also so that other people in their household can see their patterns and see where they are in their cycle and see how severe their symptoms are at that time. That can be a really helpful communication tool. Some of my students and clients like to set alarms to remember to do this, and then others use a Post-it note to remind themselves. So I've done a lot of talking before we've talked about symptom mapping, but this is it. This is a portion of our resource that we provide to you that you can use to map your symptoms. And here we're going to talk through how we do this. So cycle day 1 is going to be day 1 of your period. So say today you look at your app and you're on day 15, you can start this. Just come in and say, okay, on day 15, today is February 13th. This is where I am, and I'm going to start in this box. We added this habit tracker here. You can use this if this is useful. We put this in for my one-to-one clients because we're building personalized protocols for them. And they want to see, okay, as I'm implementing these habits, how is it impacting my symptoms? So the things you're doing to feel better, you can put in here and check those boxes if you want to use the habit tracker. Once your period comes again, you're going to start a blank sheet of this and go back to cycle day 1. On this side of the graph here, you're going to be choosing what symptoms you want to map. So we have a big symptom list in this kit for you to, choose which symptoms are the most reoccurring, the most difficult for you to manage, and the symptoms that you're wanting to target or the symptoms that you're mapping in order to get a diagnosis or evaluate for a diagnosis. Now here you can see some of these symptoms are combined. So if symptoms show up together for you, like an increased appetite and cravings, or breast swelling and tenderness, or irritability and anger, you can combine those, but it's up to you how you decide to map these symptoms. And then here we have no symptoms, mild symptoms, moderate symptoms, or severe symptoms. So we're going to get into how you determine which category your symptoms fall into, but this is the gist of the top part of the graph. Some of my clients, I do recommend you get into the habit of doing this every day, but some clients wait until they feel like they're symptomatic and then they start. What's important is that you're collecting as much data as you can, and you're making this work for you. So it's going to be up to you if you can do this every day, or if you're just going to wait and assume that, okay, if I didn't record a symptom, it means I didn't have any. A little bit sketchy in my opinion, but it's up to you. This is your process. So the lower part of the page here is continued. And here we're also going to be looking out for symptoms of premenstrual exacerbation. So if this was one of my clients' symptom maps and I was reviewing it with her, and we're seeing that she's experiencing emotional sensitivity and depression most of the month, and then it's getting worse premenstrually, this would be a sign of premenstrual exacerbation rather than just PMS or just PMDD. So we're looking out for patterns here. Fatigue is another common one we see with PME. But down here in this note section is where you're going to record any events, stressors, lifestyle or diet changes that happen during this cycle, because it's important to remember that what happens this cycle doesn't only impact this cycle. So the follicle that is developing the egg that you ovulate this month took 90 days to mature. So if you have a really hard cycle, you don't only want to look back at the previous couple of weeks and say, well, what happened? Why was my cycle so bad this time? You want to zoom back a full 90 days. And I promise you that 3 months away from that stressful event, you're probably not going to remember, oh, I got into a fight with my boss, or oh, I changed my medication dosage, or oh, I traveled and my routines got thrown off. It's really hard to remember those things retrospectively. So you're going to be recording those down here so you can monitor that as you're moving forward in the symptom mapping process. We also have a digital version of this that offers more customization. So you can do this in Excel or you can do this in Google Sheets. And I like that for my more digital clients because you can use colors, you can create, some of my clients want like a bigger range of symptom severity. So you can modify all of these details and make it work better for you. You can get more creative in the digital version versus the analog version that we have, but people are different, so we like to provide two options. Unfortunately, we do not have an app for this, but maybe in the future. But here too, so this is easier to see your pattern when you're using colors. If we have, a color for low or none, we have a color for mild, we have a color for moderate, and we have a color for severe. You could also use a bar chart format where you're coloring the boxes all the way up and you can see the pattern more clearly versus what you're seeing by just filling in one box. But again, you're making this work for you. What we want to be able to do is look at it and visually see your pattern across the menstrual cycle, your symptom pattern. Before we move on, Monica, are there any questions so far?
I'm not seeing any questions in the chat so far, so I think that we're good to continue. Guys, if you do have any questions, don't hesitate at all.
All right. So when you're mapping your symptoms, you might be wondering, okay, how do I know if they're mild, moderate, or severe? So mild symptoms are you're going to notice, and you should notice symptoms throughout the different phases of your menstrual cycle. Different hormones, different periods of shifting hormones are going to come with different symptoms. So this process of symptom mapping is also to help you get more in touch with your body and get more in touch with your symptoms, because your symptoms, a lot of times we can feel attacked and victimized by these symptoms because it's not fun, especially if they're moderate or severe. But symptoms are information. Okay, your body cannot DM you and say, hey, Jess, your macronutrients are imbalanced and you have too much stress and your heavy metals are not being, moving through your drainage and detox pathways adequately. And so here are some symptoms so you can pay attention to what's going on. And different symptoms can be tied back to different triggers and different um, organs and different areas of dysregulation in the body. So when I'm reviewing symptom maps with clients, I'm looking at what is the symptom, what is the pattern, what is the severity. Because if we're talking about breast tenderness, for example, that's going to point me to a handful of reasons that would result in breast tenderness. Where if we're looking at anger, irritability, and rage, it's pointing to a different set of drivers behind those symptoms. But again, these symptoms are giving you information about your body that's very valuable. So, are the symptoms noticeable? That would fall into the mild category. Are the symptoms uncomfortable? That's starting to move into the moderate category. And then, are the symptoms impacting your ability to function normally in your day? So, that would be in the severe category. And then in that note section, when we're looking at, okay, what do I need to record? What other factors are important for me to be paying attention to in relation to my cycle if I'm having symptoms to the point that I'm doing the symptom mapping process? So travel is a trigger, stress is a trigger, illness, starting or stopping a medication can impact your symptoms, sleep disturbances, any sort of emotional or physical stress, changes in diet and exercise, among many more things, can impact your cycle symptoms, not only, like I said, this cycle, but for 2 additional cycles to come. When we're reviewing the symptom map and we're looking to identify triggers and recognize patterns, we need to be aware, like I said, that lifestyle factors can trigger your symptoms. Dietary factors can influence your symptoms. Environmental factors can influence them, stress and sleep patterns, exercise and movement, and your interpersonal relationships. So we're looking for triggers, but when we're reviewing the pattern of symptoms, we also want to be looking at, okay, how are these triggers playing out over the course of the pattern of my symptoms? And this is going to look different for each and every one of you. And every cycle, again, is unique because I might not travel every single cycle. I may not get into an interpersonal conflict every single cycle. My sleep might not be disrupted every single cycle. So you're through identifying the triggers and through recognizing the patterns, you're getting more information about yourself, which is going to help you target those symptoms. And another reason I love the symptom mapping process is because it helps you take action towards the symptoms. So by figuring out your triggers, the timing, and the patterns and what your symptoms are, this can allow you to plan your month a little bit differently. So right now, I'm on cycle day like 26 or 7. In the past, I would have never planned to do a training in my late luteal phase. So, woo, this is a testament to how far I've come with PMDD that I can get in front of you all and pull this training off when I before would have been suicidal and not able to get out of bed.
I'm also day 26. So
Love it. Yes.
it is possible, people.
We're doing it. And obviously, I think when I say that, people are like, oh, like what privilege for you to like plan your month around your cycle or whatever. I'm not saying you can plan everything around your cycle, but you can plan some things. You can give yourself more space, more time in between the things you have to do. You can fortify yourself if you know you have to do something during a time of your cycle where you've recognized you have a symptom pattern. And sometimes, yeah, you can change things around and avoid doing things that you're not as apt to be able to do, like do a job interview or maybe have a hard conversation when you know that you're going to be symptomatic. So this creates a lot of leverage for yourself. It helps you be more prepared to navigate your symptoms. It can help you communicate your needs when you identify those patterns and the timing of those patterns. It can help you ask for support. It absolutely validates your experience. If you see this reoccurring pattern every single cycle, that starts to create distance between the symptoms and who you are as a person. Because if you're living with severe premenstrual symptoms, what happens is you start to turn on yourself, and those symptoms start to make you feel less than as a person. You don't trust yourself. You start to hate yourself. And if you can see, oh, right on time, here's some of my symptoms popping up, that really creates a buffer between who you are and the symptom, which starts to allow you to be kinder to yourself as you understand this is a pattern, this isn't who I am. It can help you get a diagnosis, one of the main reasons we do symptom mapping. It can help you identify those premenstrual exacerbation symptoms. It can help you monitor the efficacy of healing protocols that you're putting in place. And very important, it can help you monitor side effects of medications and supplements, because maybe you're a lot more self-aware than my clients and my students and myself, but so often when you're in the symptoms, you're in it, and it's going to be really hard for you to recognize, oh, I started a medication or I stopped a medication. How is this impacting the severity of my symptoms? You're just like living in the moment. So when it comes to treating and managing PMS and PMDD symptoms, a lot of times we're using SSRIs, we're using birth control, and unfortunately those come with risks of side effects and come with the risk to make your symptoms worse. If you don't have a symptom mapping chart before you start, it's going to be hard for you to remember 2 months, 3 months ago, are my symptoms worse? Are they the same? Are they getting better? You don't have any data, and I promise you, you're not going to have a clear vision of the reality of the situation if you don't have that data. So this really is such a powerful tool to just clear up your perception of yourself and clear up your perception of the reality that you're living in as you're trying to navigate these symptoms. So we symptom track to know where we are in our cycle. We symptom map to change our cycle. Something else that symptom mapping helps you do is it's going to help you reduce and manage your symptoms. So often the biggest mistake I see from my students, students and clients, is that they're waiting until they're symptomatic to reduce and manage the symptoms. And that is not going to get you the results that you're looking for. We reduce and manage symptoms every single day with every single choice that we make. We have the opportunity to heal, be neutral, or trigger more severe symptoms. So I like to, when I'm working with my students and clients, I like to provide this framework, and it's going to be different depending on your symptom pattern, but most generally, okay. Most generally, can you not? Okay, I'm just gonna let her out because someone is here. The reality of working from home with dogs. Okay. So most generally, symptoms with PMS and PMDD are going to, it's really different for everyone, but say your symptoms are lasting a little bit into the menstrual cycle. When we're symptomatic, we want to be using management strategies And when we are not symptomatic, we want to be using reduction strategies. And those are not the same. So once you identify your symptom pattern and you see how things are playing out from phase to phase, you can figure out, okay, which tools in my toolbox do I want to be using now when I'm not symptomatic that are going to help reduce my symptoms in the luteal phase versus what tools in my toolbox should I be using when I'm symptomatic and I'm trying to manage. Because let's say if any of you are here and you've lived with PMDD and you're escalating and you're in an episode, you're probably not going to be like, I'm going to like drink some water right now and make sure I'm hitting my macronutrient needs. And no, you're going to be like de-escalating from the experience. So the tools that we need are very different when we're symptomatic versus when we're not. If you don't know your symptom pattern, you're just like out there on a boat without a paddle, trying to figure out how to navigate this all. So using symptom mapping as a PMDD diagnostic tool, I wanted to share with you the DSM criteria for PMDD just briefly. Comes down to timing. So symptoms must occur during the last week before menstruation, but oftentimes they're occurring 2 weeks before menstruation. They must improve within a few days of menstruation starting, and they must be minimal or absent in the week after your period. To receive a PMDD diagnosis with your symptom mapper, you have to have at least one of the core emotional mental symptoms that are listed here: mood swings, irritability, anger, relationship conflicts, depression, hopelessness, self-critical thoughts, anxiety, tension, or feeling on edge. And then you have to have a total of 5 symptoms when combined. So other symptoms, we talked about PMDD symptoms before, but in the diagnostic criteria, other symptoms are going to be losing interest in normal activities, trouble concentrating, fatigue or low energy, changes in appetite or food cravings, sleep problems, either sleeping too much or too little, feeling overwhelmed or out of control, and then those physical symptoms: breast tenderness, joint pain, bloating, weight changes. There are more symptoms than this that we experience with PMDD, but this is what's in the diagnostic criteria. To receive a PMDD diagnosis, you will need to have tracked at least 2 months of cycles for confirmation. And we need to see that it's not just a worsening of another condition, like which would be premenstrual exacerbation. And it should be evaluated that these are not caused by any other medical condition, but rarely are people getting adequately tested for that. Now, you might be thinking, if you haven't seen this PMDD diagnostic criteria, like, oh, like, don't most of us experience some of these symptoms? Yes, so I have some qualms with that, but that's a conversation for another day. When it comes to testing for PMDD, these are the tests that I recommend. You're going to have access to this testing guide inside the symptom mapping kit, but it's really important for you to understand that there's no blood, saliva, urine, genetic, or imaging test to say, okay, Monica, you have PMDD. That's what this is. PMDD is a collection of symptoms. It doesn't tell us anything about why the symptoms are happening. And PMDD isn't a diagnosis like other diagnoses where it's like, once you get the diagnosis, you have PMDD forever. This is a mental health diagnosis, and it's has some caveats and some nuances. Some of the lab tests that I run for PMS and PMDD symptoms are going to be a comprehensive stool panel, a Dutch hormone test as a comprehensive hormone panel, functional blood lab testing, and hair tissue mineral analysis. So these are great tests for us to see, okay, what is happening in the body that's driving these symptoms to be so severe? And in 17 years of me trying to get help and going to various providers saying I have severe PMS symptoms, They only ran blood labs, and they only ran blood labs through conventional ranges because I was only going to conventional doctors. And those ranges are very wide because they're diagnosing and treating disease. So the blood labs I run are the same types of blood labs that your doctor is going to run, but the ranges through which I'm viewing those are much more narrow because I'm not a doctor. I don't treat and diagnose disease. I help you optimize your health. So for example, here are some vitamin D, one marker of the many, many markers that we run. 3 clients lately, I've ran their blood labs, looked at them through a functional lens. All of them are severely deficient in vitamin D, and most of their providers gave them the return answer of their blood labs of everything's fine and normal. And this is just one marker that's massively going to be impacting your symptoms. Minerals also massively impact your symptoms. All right, and then how we address your symptoms with your symptom mapping data at Her Mood Mentor in order to help you reduce and better manage your symptoms is we look at the pattern, we evaluate lifestyle factors in these 7 core areas of hormone health, and then I'm a nutritional therapist, so we address foundations of your health, digestion, blood sugar, healthy fats. All of your stress and sex hormones are made from healthy fats, minerals, and hydration. And if you're really experiencing PMDD symptoms, you might look at this and be like, I'm homicidal, I'm suicidal. Like, how is drinking water, how is addressing any of these factors going to make a difference for me? Because it feels like my symptoms are so severe that I need something as severe to match them. But the reality is that the compound effect is real, not only in finances, but in our day-to-day lives with our health. So all of those choices that you make over time and all of the things that you're exposed to add up and drive symptoms. So I want to share a couple of case studies as we wrap up here. This client came to work with me, and we asked her, when you started this program, what were your primary hormonal mood symptoms? And she said, when I started this program, my primary symptoms were anxiety, depression, anger, irritability, crying spells, acne, and bloating. They were affecting every aspect of my life, including my motivation at work, in my personal projects, my relationships with my boyfriend, my ability to finish tasks in the day, my self-care. I felt helpless and needed an external guide to help me work through my symptoms and struggles. We ran a symptom assessment for her, and this is a tool that I use to start figuring out where we're going to take action to see where are some drivers behind your symptoms that we can address in conjunction in one-to-one work with their symptom mapping and their patterns and all of that. So when she came to me, she started out with a symptom burden of 359 points. And when we wrapped up, she had reduced that symptom burden by 270 points, taking her down to a symptom burden of 89 points in a relatively short time. We asked her, in what ways has the quality of your life improved since starting this program? And are there any areas where you've noticed significant positive change? And she said, I feel more grounded and stable. I have more consistent energy levels, and in the ways that I can give to myself and others, I'm a more present friend, family member, and partner. I enjoy connecting with others more, and I feel less daunted by the idea of socializing or putting myself out there in social situations. I also feel a much deeper inner compassion and peace. I forgive myself and care for myself instead of tearing myself down or seeking negative thoughts or ideas of bettering or perfection. I have more energy to work out, cook for myself, make art, read, do the things that I enjoy. She says this brings so much joy back into my life. So I want you to walk away from this training and anything that you come into contact with me and my work, knowing that you can improve your symptoms. These symptoms don't have to define your life like they did Monica and I's for so long. It felt like there was no escape. I really didn't believe I would make it to be 35 years old. And it's not just us that are getting these types of results. Like this is possible for you as well. And then I want you to know, walking away from this training, I've been building this practice. I'm going on my 7th year here. And so I have so many resources for you. If you're looking for support, we have courses, we have workbooks, we have workshops, we have lab testing. I work one-to-one with a limited number of people per year. We have a support community where I'm hosting weekly support calls and trainings and hosting guests like Monica to come in and share their wisdom. I have so many free resources, including the symptom mapping kit I'm going to give you today. We have doctor appointment prep forms that help you advocate for yourself going into your doctor's appointments and keep records. And I also have a supplement directory that can help you get started in reducing your symptoms if you're not already taking Maria. We have a blog, and then I'm very active on Instagram, so you can find me there. I'm going to go ahead. Let me see if I can open.
Don't.
Well, okay, I'm going to share this last slide, and then I'll give you the links if you want to grab the symptom mapping kit.
I did share a link to your symptom mapping kit in the chat
Okay.
already.
Yay. Okay, thanks, Monica.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and then the couple of more slides here to wrap up. If you are struggling with PMDD, I wanted to give Monica's community a little special offer today. So I'm giving you 40% off everything I wish I would have had when I started learning to reduce and manage symptoms, including that reproductive health education that I promise you did not properly get, the PMDD rehab course that's walking you step by step through reducing and learning to better manage your symptoms. I have a workbook that helps you transform those automatic negative thoughts and that negative relationship you can have with yourself, especially during the luteal phase. And then another workbook that's helping you improve your partner relationship despite PMDD. So you can get all of this for 41% off just by being in Monica's community. And I'm happy to answer questions, in my DMs, or if you want to email me if you have questions about any of these offers. I'll drop a link to the chat, a link in the chat to this offer in just a moment. I just, before we wrap up, wanted to thank you for being here for this training. Let me know if you decide to do symptom mapping, what you learn for it, how it goes for you. And remember to follow me at Her Mood Mentor. Check out our podcast called PMDD Pep Talk if you want to learn more.
Amazing. I learned so much. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah.
We do have some questions. I dropped your
Great.
Instagram in the chat. I dropped the symptom mapping in the chat. I'll put the link in there again just so that it's recurs. And then if you want to drop a link to the offer as
Yes.
well.
So here's the link to the offer.
Perfect. Okay, first question was from Sarah. Such a good question. How do you know by symptom tracking if it's PMDD or if it's also a transition to menopause? Like, how could you differentiate those two?
So this is going to be, there's so many symptom mapping questions that are tough. This is one of them. When it comes to perimenopause, symptoms are often going to be occurring not like so specifically in the premenstrual phase. We see a lot of other changes with perimenopause. Okay, I have to let my dog in again. I'm sorry, because she's so distracting. I'll show her to you before we wrap up so you can forgive her because she's so cute. But when it comes to perimenopause, we're looking for more changes. So the cycle length, from bleed to bleed, your entire cycle phase often is going to change, get shorter or longer. And so when we're reviewing the symptom mapping data, if we have generally we're on a 28-day cycle and then all of a sudden we have like a 34-day cycle, if that happens once, that's fine. Like we expect the cycle to change. Every single cycle is unique. We're looking for patterns over time. So with perimenopause, we often see the cycle, shifting majorly or shifting and then staying shifted. We often also see symptoms shifting not only in the luteal phase, but getting more premenstrual symptoms, having the menstrual phase of the cycle changing, bleeding a lot heavier, bleeding a lot less, bleeding longer, bleeding shorter. So there's a lot, and this is where that education is really key because, like, we haven't been taught about the menstrual cycle, we haven't been taught about perimenopause and menopause, and I'm teaching you about that in the Meet Your Menstrual Cycle mini course. So you're gonna have a hard time figuring out what's going on and how to identify it if you don't have that education. Again, it's like going over to your bike and being like, what are these parts and how do they connect to each other? And like, what is going on here? Like, you don't know. So you need that education in order to be able to navigate the different stages of the reproductive continuum, whether it be postpartum, whether it be weaning, whether it be perimenopause, whether it be moving into menopause.
Amazing. Cycle awareness, such a big one. Cycle education. None of us got it. And now it's so interesting to watch all of us like learn it in our 20s, 30s. But so
New
needed.
frontier. Yes.
Okay. Another question, a good one. And one that I think that our traditional practitioners are failing us with. Again, you kind of mentioned this a little bit, but someone asked about um basically like the timing of blood work and if it's beneficial to test estrogen and progesterone throughout our cycle to see if there are larger spikes or drops and if that could be attributing. So do you have a preferred like testing time within the cycle?
Yes. So I have tips for blood serum testing in the testing handout that you're going to get with the symptom mapping kit. I tell you when to test, how to prepare for testing, but I always recommend testing if you're just looking for symptoms, not looking specifically at hormones during the luteal phase when you're symptomatic. But remember, when you get those results back, again, the range that they're using is going to be very wide. So I can't tell you, I've worked with, hundreds of clients looking at their labs and they're told everything is normal. And then we run them through my functional range and there are like 20 plus that are out of range that are telling us information about their bodies that they're going to be told are normal, are normal, are normal until they're diseased. And we're trying to address this before you get to a diseased state in any of those markers. I don't love blood serum testing for hormones because hormones pulse. So depending on when you get the test, it's just like taking a picture of you and then asking, well, how was your entire month based on this picture? Like it's a moment in time. You wore lots of different outfits, you were in lots of different places, you had lots of different moods. It's really not a lot of information for us to base anything on. So I prefer, if you're wanting to look at hormones, I prefer a saliva or urine panel.
Okay, amazing. That's super helpful. Thank you. So some of that information is in,
The
you
symptom
said,
mapping kit.
okay, perfect. I'm just putting a couple more links. People are asking for links to your one-on-one, so I'm giving them a link to your website just in general, where I think they can probably find all of the information.
Yeah, so if you're
You,
looking for one-to-one, I recommend starting with an introductory session, which is where we'll run that symptom assessment. So those graphs that graph I was showing you when I was doing the case study, we run that in the introductory session, and that's where we talk about one-to-one options.
Perfect. M asks, what's the best way to communicate to your partner or anyone what you're going through, which I believe that this is included as well in the symptom mapping kit. Or no, where did I see? You have like a partner
I have a partner
course.
workbook, and I teach in PMDD rehab, I teach an entire module on relationships in PMDD, which goes through this in depth. In my PMDD community, I teach a free training in there about PMDD and relationships, which is really awesome. So I don't really want to dive deep into it here. I have a lot of resources on my Instagram as well, but you can use your symptom mapper as a communication tool.
Amazing. Yeah. Such a good tool to when you start to see the pattern. So like if you do the symptom mapping for 2 to 4 months, somewhere in there, and you're starting to notice like, oh, like this is pretty consistent in that luteal phase or on cycle days 20 to 24, like there's almost the ability to ask for grace or like just be like, hey, like I'm gonna be a little like I need a little extra affirmation this week or whatever it is. But to be able to understand for yourself what's occurring, it then makes it easier for others to understand as well, I have found.
So necessary. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, can you still track and test when you have a Marina IUD?
If you're bleeding with the Mirena, you can more easily, but usually once you get that IUD the first couple of years, you likely aren't going to be having a menstrual cycle, even though you're still ovulating. So you might need to get a little bit more, uh, use more body literacy tools. So things like uh, the fertility awareness method, where you're tracking your basal body temperature to see when you ovulate, doing LH testing to see when you're ovulating, or tracking your cervical fluid to see when you're ovulating to know, okay, when am I ovulating? When am I moving into my luteal phase? And then you'll be able to look at your symptom mapper and kind of know, okay, where am I falling? Where are the symptoms falling in the context of when I'm ovulating? And I think this is a good thing for anyone to do because it teaches you more about your body, but you need additional education to do this. It requires more time, more attention. But again, with symptom mapping or with a fertility awareness method, if you're not using it to conceive or using it to avoid contraception, these are great things to try, to just have the experience of doing this for 2 to 3 months, to understand your body, to create a different relationship with your body. And then these aren't things you necessarily have to do forever. So don't get too overwhelmed by like, oh, all the steps to use the fertility awareness method or all the steps to symptom map. It's not really designed necessarily for you to have to do this forever. A lot of my clients continue to do it after they work through my program and work with me one to one because they love it so much. But you don't have to put that type of pressure on yourself of like, once I start symptom mapping, I'm doing it forever.
Definitely that alleviates some of the pressure for sure. Okay, well, that's all the questions in the chat. For everyone tuning in, thank you for being here on your Thursday evening. A big thanks to Jess for spending her Thursday with all of us and sharing her knowledge. Again, please do go and make sure you're following her on Instagram. She shares the funniest memes that are so relatable in the PMDD space, which, like, we all just need that sometimes. We just need to know that we're not alone. And memes kind of crush in that area. So, Jess, thank you so much. Anything else you want to share before we wrap up?
Just my broken record that this can get better if you're living with severe symptoms, whether they be physical or psychological. This is not something you just have to white knuckle it through. You can get support, you can learn to reduce and manage these symptoms, and it can completely change the quality of your life.
Can attest for sure.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you everyone for being here. And feel free to come into the community and ask any follow-up questions. DM Jess, she has offered that. And definitely go and look at some of her offerings because they are so, so valuable. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you so much.